Well, welcome, 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 our beloved, brilliant colleague, Cassandra. We so appreciate your consistent leadership. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Cassandra, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
So my name is Cassandra James. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently the Director of Programs at Volunteer Toronto. Volunteer Toronto is the country's largest volunteer center. At the center of our work is connecting people who want to volunteer to the communities and organizations that need them. And I have the privilege of leading the team that is focused on making those connections work. And so at the intersections of our learning for community members, but also for nonprofits, our events and outreach initiatives to connect people, to help steward their understanding of the landscape of volunteering in Canada and in Toronto specifically, but also thinking about how we build better systems, better programs, better communities of belonging for people to show up at. That is sort of the heart of the work that we do at Volunteer Toronto, and very deeply embedded in how we design programs. I always like to say that I come to this space, to any space, with all the identities that I bring to the world. So I am an island girl. I come as an immigrant to Canada from the Spice Island, Grenada, and that's a really important part of who I am and the work that I do and how I show up in spaces. I have had the privilege of seeing what volunteering can do to evolve lives, my own included. I am a serial volunteer. I do a lot of mentoring, mostly with young people. I've had the chance to do that with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Toronto. I've done that through my university with new international students and a couple other organizations over time. And so I feel like I'm one of the people who don't fall into the nonprofit sector, but chose this very intentionally because I think this work is important for building community and creating lives. So this is me and the work I do.
That's beautiful. My father was a big brother in Toronto, and I was a big brother at one point. So
Yeah.
very impressed with that organization always. My next question is, what inspires you about your work currently? What has you curious?
What has me curious? It's been a rough, we'll say rough, few years managing through a pandemic. We at Volunteer Toronto got to see a pretty amazing community response at the start of the pandemic to people wanting to help and people wanting to be engaged in community and support each other. Big uprising of grassroots organization and mutual aid support systems, especially in the first year. And those trends are just have been evolving over time. And so it has been interesting to sit at the front line of how organizations and people are trying to connect to each other. And so we are we are we're looking at and thinking about what that looks like going into the future, because we've all changed. We the way people want to be involved in community has changed. The way organizations function has changed, and I think we are seeing in our space a mismatch, a misalignment of what our communities need from our organizations when it comes to volunteering and participation, and what organizations are capable of, in some cases capable because capacities have been stretched to the nth degree over the last few years. But sometimes some very entrenched ideas about what volunteering and community engagement looks like that need to evolve for the sake of building stronger communities. So I think what I'm curious about is what the next evolution of volunteerism and community engagement looks like. We've started in the last year talking about decent volunteering, very much leaning on Ontario Nonprofit Network's conversation on decent work, and talking about what it looks like to take a decolonial and anti-oppressive and anti-racist approach to volunteer engagement, which starts with acknowledging like the power dynamics involved in our traditional understandings of volunteering, the sort of white settler way of doing things that doesn't resonate very well with certain communities, particularly immigrant and newcomer communities, and what it means to do otherwise, right? What it means to make space for multiple ways of getting involved, and how we sort of tear apart the current system, or like sometimes we need to tear some stuff apart. I'll say tear apart. I'll own that. Sometimes we need to tear the system apart in order to create something that is more inclusive and brings more people into the room. And so that is those are the spaces I'm looking at and looking for and trying to advocate for in our work right now.
That's beautiful. And I'm a huge fan of ONN. I work closely with Kathy and Nee Marie. So yeah, give thanks for all that context and your brilliance as always. So my next question is, do you have a set of key priorities right now in your work?
Lots of talk about decent volunteering. That's happening in a lot in our spaces. We, in the last, oh my gosh, I think 3-4 months, it's been a whirlwind partnership with Toronto Foundation. We've been in the last few months, we're talking about the continuum of civic engagement. So again, thinking about how we broaden people's understanding of how they can get involved, understanding that not everyone is at the place where they can run for a city council or join a board or even volunteer on a weekly basis. What is the breadth of that experience look like? And so we're in the middle of a Power of Us campaign, which has several parts. We're talking about the continuum of civic engagement, but we're also delivering microgrants to community members, and so we're in the middle of that process now. It's like taking up so much airtime. It's a fun for me personally to be in the space where we ask community, if we give you $1,000 and you could create a any kind of thing, an event, a sort of program, give you $1,000 to create community connection very locally in your neighborhood, what would you do? And it's been really amazing for us because definitely more people signed up for those microgrants than we anticipated, which is great. But we've already gotten to see like there's already work happening that we weren't just not aware of. And so there are communities and residents groups and grassroots organizations doing amazing work in the city of Toronto, just so hyper locally that we don't necessarily see it at the scale that we function. And so it's been beautiful to see that. And we're looking forward to see what the projects we get to fund in the coming 2 months. We should launch that in April. They should start launching those projects in April. But that partnership with Toronto Foundation works really well for us because we are very aligned in one specific way. It's the understanding that the need for social connection in the city of Toronto and specifically is a very big deal. Their vital signs report came out in November of last year, and it was like Toronto is the loneliest city in the country. Not surprising for those of us who live here, but people are more isolated than they've ever been. We have, which is adding to like issues of mental health and crime, and affecting our ability to be with each other in community in this city. And so the goal of our work together, goal of the microgrants and our civic engagement campaign is to help foster that connection, because those social connections help create strong cities, help create healthier people. And so that is a very big priority for us. Digging into the work of building social capital across Toronto, helping people build stronger connections, hopefully helping to reduce isolation. And there's funding to do big projects. This is such a small thing, but I think we really need that localized approach to engagement. People are involved where they live and where they go to school and where their people are. And so our goal is to really reach people where they are and help them build community where they are.
That's beautiful. We actually have an interview coming up with Sharon Avery from TCF, And that partnership that you just articulated reminds me of some of the remarkable place-based investments that so many other organizations are trying to get their heads around. And it seems like y'all have
Yeah.
mastered it. So congratulations.
I don't know about master.
Well,
It's
sounds
good
remarkable.
timing.
Yeah,
Relationships built over time and just being in the right place. I think we sort of were like we want to do the same thing. We're coming at it from different angles. We have different strengths in this space, and it's been really beautiful to be able to merge that with Toronto Foundation in the last 4 or 5 months. Yeah.
that's beautiful. Thank you so much for articulating that so clearly. I appreciate the impact. So my second last question, what is your ultimate goal and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
I'd say what a success for me, and I think built into our operational plan right now is how do we go to community? Like it is, Volunteer Toronto has the privilege of being a fairly well-funded, stable organization. We've had stable funding over many years, which has given us capacity to do some of the work that we've been able to do. And the with that comes a responsibility to the city that we serve, but also I think to capacity building across the networks that we work in, particularly in the province, volunteer centers across the country. And so we think really clearly, I think, about how we show up in community. So inside our programs, particularly, we've been talking about how we ensure that our outreach is very place-based. We've been running a series of very small volunteer fairs. We make sure we're running them in localized communities for different demographics. So we've run a newcomer fair in Scarborough. It's high newcomer engagement area, for instance. We have planned a volunteer fair for Black communities in February that we're doing alongside the Jamaican Canadian Association. And that, like, with the acknowledgement of, as an organization, we don't have good relationships inside Black communities. And for us, it's our job where we sit as a like I said, a stably funded organization with 50 years of experience behind us. It's our job to go into communities, to offer the hand of relationship, to build relationships inside communities so we can do our work better. And so that is where that's our for me, success looks like being able to build stronger relationships with organizations, with communities of all kinds. It looks like a city that feels less disconnected, that people are getting out to volunteer or to engage in community in whatever way that makes sense for them at any given time. And so less tangible goal when it comes to success. But I think you feel that in your environment over time when that shift happens. And so hopefully I as a person who claims this city as a home, one of my two, yeah, I'll start to feel that along with everyone else.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to actions for our listeners and our viewers?
Calls to action. I invite people to take a look, if I can send you our continuum of civic engagement, just because we're really proud of that, first of all. But it for us, it really was a step back to think about. There are so many ways for people to get involved in community. There's so much breadth to civic engagement, and it's I think it's such a necessary thing for us. And so I want to invite people to engage with us in that space, to look at that continuum of engagement, find the one thing, like find the space where, right now I can't, commit to a year as a big sister. I get that. As a person who's been a big sister, it's a big commitment. But if you can find the thing that helps you, make a new connection in community, sort of feeds that civic engagement goal, I invite everyone always to do that.
Ashe, I couldn't agree more. And sometimes the commitments can be tailored towards you. I know that my
Right.
father, when he was a big brother, it was a huge commitment. But when I was a big brother, I already had children, and they built a program that was called the In-School Mentoring Program. So I only
I'm
had,
in the in-school
oh,
program
so yeah,
now.
so this is
Yes.
exciting 10. This is so I'm dating myself. I'm 40 now. I was about 29 at the time, and I only had
Yeah.
like, so the time commitment, it was impactful, but it
Yeah.
still works around a volunteer schedule that made sense for me, my family, and my community, you know? So I agree with you. We're finding ways to volunteer your time, whether it be on a board, and being civically inclined is so important, because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. So I appreciate.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So thank you so much, Cassandra, for your remarkable energy, positive vibes, your candor, authenticity, and your clear visionary leadership. And as always at Setsi, we close the way we began, by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, fam. I so appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.